Imagine a space where the clamor of the world recedes into a soft murmur, a sanctuary where the relentless noise, the ceaseless mental chatter, and the unending demands of life gently dissolve. How would it feel to step into such serenity? Now reflect on this. That sanctuary isn't a far-off dream or a place you need to find outside yourself. It already exists within you. This silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's a deep stillness, an unshakable peace, and a clarity that roots you firmly in the present moment. You might be thinking, but isn't silence just quiet? Yes, it's quiet. But in Buddhism, silence is much more than just the absence of sound. It's an active, powerful tool for understanding who you are beneath the noise. So why is silence so central to Buddhist wisdom? How can something as simple as sitting in stillness help you unlock a deeper sense of inner peace? And more importantly, how can silence help you understand your mind? Stick around because we're diving into these questions today. This isn't just about learning to meditate. It's about learning to listen to yourself and how that listening leads to a life of balance, peace, and growth. Let's begin. In Buddhism, silence is considered one of the most profound forms of wisdom, but not in the way you might think. Silence isn't just about the quiet in the world around you. It's about quieting the mind. Noble silence is a term often used in Buddhism. It's a state of mind that goes beyond the simple absence of words or sounds. It refers to a mental state where you stop clinging to distractions, thoughts, judgments, and the usual mental noise that constantly spins in your mind. The Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, often practiced and taught in silence. For example, when he first met the 5 monks who would become his disciples, he didn't speak a word to them. Instead, he simply sat in meditation, demonstrating the power of quiet stillness. In his silence, he was showing them a deeper truth, that silence could lead to a deeper understanding of life, the self, and the world. The purpose of silence, according to Buddhism, is not to shut out the world or escape reality. It's about creating a space where you can hear your true self, free from the overwhelming noise of your thoughts and external distractions. When we sit in silence, we stop the constant flow of our inner commentary, our to-do lists, our plans, and our worries. Without these distractions, we come face to face with ourselves in a more profound way. We start to see the patterns in our minds, the habits that govern our actions, and the emotions that drive us. In Buddhist philosophy, this clarity of mind is a key aspect of the path to enlightenment, the process of waking up to our true nature. You might have heard the term nirvana, the ultimate state of peace and freedom from suffering. Well, silence plays a vital role in that journey. By learning to quiet the mind, we come closer to experiencing the world as it truly is, without the filter of our preconceptions, biases, and emotional baggage. But it's not just monks in monasteries who benefit from silence. Silence is available to all of us, no matter where we are. It's a practice you can bring into your everyday life. Whether you're sitting quietly for a few minutes or walking in nature, silence is a way of coming home to yourself. Here's something interesting to think about. In today's world, we are constantly bombarded by external noise, social media, news, work pressure, and personal distractions. It feels like we can't escape it. Silence, in this context, becomes a form of resistance. It's not about being antisocial or avoiding life. It's about creating space for your mind and heart to reconnect with what truly matters. Silence, in the Buddhist sense, is not about being quiet for the sake of quiet. It's about choosing to listen, to create space for deeper awareness. And when we do that, we find peace. When was the last time you sat in complete silence with no distractions, no notifications, just you and your thoughts? For many of us, that might feel like an uncomfortable question. In a world that's always moving, always producing, silence can feel a bit foreign, maybe even unsettling. But what if silence is the very thing we need most? In Buddhism, silence is not just a means to an end, it's the practice itself. When we choose silence, we're giving our minds a moment to rest, a chance to breathe. And with that rest comes something powerful: clarity. One of the first and most obvious benefits of silence is that it reduces stress. Think about it. When we're constantly surrounded by noise, by the demands of our everyday lives, we're in a state of mental and emotional tension. Silence, even if it's just a few minutes each day, helps break this cycle. By embracing silence, we allow our minds to reset, to let go of the stress that builds up without us even realizing it. But the benefits of silence go even deeper than that. When we practice silence, we start to become aware of something Buddhists call emptiness, a state of mind that is open, clear, and free from all the distractions and attachments that usually occupy it. Emptiness doesn't mean we're empty inside. It means we have a space in which to see things as they truly are, without judgment or preconceived notions. This is especially important for young people today, who are navigating a world of constant comparison and pressure. Silence is a way to turn off the noise and tune into what's real, our thoughts, feelings, and sense of self beyond what society or social media tells us. So how does silence help us understand ourselves better? Imagine your mind is like a lake. When there's noise, when we're constantly moving, that lake is filled with waves, ripples, and distortions. We can't see what's beneath the surface because the water is constantly in motion. But when we let that water become still, when we choose silence, we can see through to the bottom. We can observe our mind, our own heart, without the usual distractions. Another benefit of silence is that it allows us to cultivate self-awareness. Silence acts like a mirror. It shows us the patterns of our minds. We start noticing the repetitive thoughts, the things that trigger us, the things that bring us joy. It's a process of getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. This self-awareness, in turn, helps us make better choices, choices that align with our true values rather than what others expect of us. One of the most rewarding parts of this practice is that it brings us a sense of inner peace. When we're constantly on the go, we're rarely present. We're either thinking about the past, regretting something we said or did, or we're worrying about the future, trying to control things that are beyond our reach. But silence brings us back to the present moment, to the here and now. It reminds us that life is happening right here, not in our minds, not in the future or the past, but right now. And in that moment we find a sense of peace that isn't dependent on our circumstances. It's a peace that comes from within, a peace that can't be taken away by the ups and downs of life. This can be incredibly empowering, especially for young people. When we learn to sit with ourselves and embrace silence, we realize that we don't need constant external validation to feel complete. We become more grounded, more resilient, and more connected to our inner selves. In Buddhism, this inner peace is seen as a refuge. It's a safe place we can always return to, no matter what's happening in the outside world. And that's the beauty of silence. It teaches us that peace isn't something we have to chase. It's something we create within ourselves. So the next time you find a moment of quiet, try not to fill it with music or scroll through your phone. Instead, let that silence be an opportunity. See it as a gift you're giving yourself, a chance to rest, reflect, and reconnect with what truly matters. So, How do we bring silence into our lives? It's one thing to understand the concept of silence and its benefits, but it's another to put it into practice, especially in a world that rarely stops to rest. Let's go over some simple yet effective ways to invite moments of silence into our daily routines. The first step is to set aside intentional time for silence each day. Start small, even just 5 minutes. Find a quiet spot. Maybe it's a corner in your room, a bench in a nearby park, or even your car before you head to work or school. During these few minutes, the goal is to let go of any need to do, fix, or accomplish anything. Just sit in the stillness, noticing any thoughts or feelings that come up. There's no right or wrong way to feel here, it's simply about observing. One helpful approach to silence is what we'll call the 5-minute rule. Each morning or evening, commit to 5 minutes of silence where you put away your phone, close your laptop, and turn off any music or background noise. In those 5 minutes, focus on your breathing. Feel the air as it enters and leaves your body. This practice alone can make a huge difference, especially if you're new to silence. Just 5 minutes a day can calm the mind, ground you, and set a peaceful tone for the rest of your day. Another practical step is to practice mindful listening. When you're in a conversation, try to give the other person your full attention without mentally planning your response or getting lost in your thoughts. This kind of silence doesn't mean staying quiet or not contributing to the conversation. It means letting go of the need to control the flow and instead just being present with the other person. This practice helps deepen connections and reminds us that silence is as much about listening as it is about speaking. Then there's the silent self-reflection exercise. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to sit in silence and reflect. Think about your day, but without judgment. Notice any moments that brought you joy or peace, as well as any moments that felt challenging. This simple act of silent self-reflection can help you understand your own emotions and reactions better. Over time, it allows you to see patterns in your thoughts and behaviors. If you're looking for a more structured silence practice, consider setting aside one day each month as a day of silence. This doesn't mean you have to be completely silent for 24 hours. It could mean spending the day off social media, avoiding unnecessary conversations, or taking a silent walk in nature. The purpose of a silent day is to give yourself a break from the usual rush of interactions and responsibilities. Use this time to read, meditate, journal, or simply be present. Now, it's also common to feel uncomfortable at first when practicing silence, especially if you're used to constant stimulation. But that discomfort is a part of the process. Silence can bring up thoughts, emotions, and memories we might normally suppress with distractions. But if we approach this discomfort with patience and compassion, it starts to transform. The thoughts lose their power, and what's left is a kind of peace we can't find through distraction. One effective way to ease into silence is to focus on breath awareness. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by thoughts or emotions, simply bring your attention back to your breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest, the rhythm of each inhale and exhale. Breathing this way can anchor you, helping your mind to settle down naturally. In Buddhism, this practice is known as anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. It's one of the most basic and powerful meditation techniques. As we focus on the breath, we're reminded that silence isn't something we need to force. It's something we return to naturally each time we pause and breathe. If you're open to it, you could even try attending a silent retreat. These retreats, common in Buddhist practice, can last from a single day to several weeks. During a retreat, participants agree to refrain from speaking, using phones, or engaging in any distractions. The idea is to fully immerse oneself in the experience of silence, allowing for deep self-reflection and insight. While this might sound intense, silent retreats can be transformative, offering a rare opportunity to disconnect from the world and reconnect with ourselves. But you don't have to go to a retreat to experience the benefits of silence. You can find small moments in your daily life, moments when you're waiting for a friend, walking to class, or even doing the dishes. Let these small pockets of silence become your practice ground. Over time, you'll notice that these moments become easier and even enjoyable, as silence becomes a friend rather than something to avoid. By making these practices a habit, we start to see the effects ripple into other parts of our lives. We become more grounded, more present, and more able to deal with life's challenges with a calm, centered mind. Remember, silence is not an escape from life. It's a way to engage with it more fully. It allows us to connect with our inner self, find clarity amid the noise, and approach our lives with a sense of peace and purpose. So next time you feel overwhelmed, try these simple practices. Give yourself the gift of silence and see how it changes not only your mood, but your entire outlook. Think about what happens when you look into a mirror. It reflects what's there, whether we like it or not. Silence, in a similar way, becomes a mirror for the mind. When we sit in silence without distractions, our thoughts, emotions, and memories start to surface. At first, it might seem chaotic, like opening the floodgates to every feeling and thought we've been avoiding. But this is where silence becomes powerful, because it allows us to truly see ourselves. In Buddhism, silence is used as a tool for self-observation. When we let the mind settle, like muddy water that slowly becomes clear, we start to see what's going on beneath the surface. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, and over time we begin to notice patterns. Maybe we're holding on to fears we didn't realize, or maybe we notice a tendency to judge ourselves or others. Silence reveals these aspects of our mind that often go unnoticed in the busyness of everyday life. There's a famous form of meditation in Buddhism called vipassana, which means seeing things as they truly are. Vipassana meditation involves sitting in silence, observing the breath and the body, and watching the thoughts that arise without reacting to them. It's not about controlling the mind or forcing ourselves to stop thinking. It's about watching, noticing, and understanding. In our daily lives, we're often so quick to react to our thoughts and emotions that we don't take the time to question them. But in silence, we have the chance to look more closely. We see that thoughts are just thoughts, not facts. Emotions, too, are temporary. They come and go like waves in the ocean. Silence allows us to create a little bit of space between us and our inner experiences, and in that space we find a sense of freedom. For young people especially, this practice can be incredibly valuable. Many of us live with high expectations, pressures, and self-criticism. Silence helps us become aware of these inner pressures, and over time, to let go of them. By observing our minds without judgment, we learn to be kinder to ourselves. Imagine sitting in silence and a critical thought arises, something like "I'm not good enough" or "I'm always making mistakes." Instead of following this thought, imagine just noticing it and letting it pass. You might even say to yourself, "Oh, there's that thought again," and then come back to the breath. This kind of self-awareness is what silence makes possible. It's not about trying to fix ourselves, but about accepting ourselves as we are. Buddhist teachers often compare the mind to a sky and thoughts to clouds that pass by. The sky doesn't try to hold on to the clouds or chase them away. It simply observes. In the same way, silence teaches us to be the sky. to watch our thoughts without attachment or resistance. This might seem simple, but it's a powerful shift in perspective. When we learn to let thoughts come and go, we become less affected by them and start to feel a deeper sense of calm. Silence also reveals our emotions. When we're busy or distracted, it's easy to ignore our feelings, but in silence, they rise to the surface. This can be challenging, especially if we're carrying pain, sadness, or unresolved conflicts. But rather than seeing these emotions as problems to be solved, silence invites us to simply feel them, to let them move through us without resistance. In Buddhism, there's a concept called metta, or loving kindness. Metta is the practice of extending compassion both to ourselves and to others. When we sit in silence and difficult emotions arise, metta encourages us to meet those feelings with kindness instead of judgment. This might mean placing a hand on our heart, taking a deep breath, and saying something gentle to ourselves like, "It's okay to feel this way," or "I'm here for you." Practicing metta in silence allows us to build a kind, compassionate relationship with our minds. Over time, silence helps us become familiar with our inner landscape. We start to see the recurring themes in our thoughts and emotions, the things that make us feel joyful, and the things that trigger us. This self-knowledge is empowering. It allows us to make conscious choices rather than acting on impulse or habit. In silence, we learn that we're not our thoughts. We're not our emotions. We're the observer of them. And this realization brings an incredible sense of freedom. We don't have to be defined by our fears, our insecurities, or our past. We can see them, understand them, and let them go. Practical ways to embrace silence. The next time you find yourself sitting in silence, try observing your mind as if you're watching a movie. Notice the thoughts that come up, the emotions that arise, but remember that you're just the audience. You don't have to identify with what you see. In that space of observation, you'll find a new kind of clarity, a mirror that reflects not only who you are, but who you have the potential to become. Silence is not just the absence of noise. It's a space for transformation. When we let our minds be still, we start to understand ourselves on a deeper level. In that understanding, we find a kind of peace that can't be shaken by the ups and downs of life. Sometimes the best way to understand the power of silence is through stories. Stories of those who have experienced profound change through this simple, quiet practice. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a story of Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would become the Buddha. Siddhartha was born a prince, surrounded by luxury, wealth, and everything anyone could desire. But despite all his possessions and privileges, he felt an emptiness, a restlessness he couldn't explain. So he left his palace, his family, and all he knew in search of answers. Siddhartha spent years studying with various teachers and practicing extreme forms of self-denial, but nothing brought him the peace he was seeking. One day, exhausted and nearly defeated, he sat beneath a Bodhi tree, resolved to remain there in silence until he found the truth he was looking for. He spent the night in deep meditation, facing the inner conflicts and fears that arose within him. It was in that silence, in that stillness, that he found enlightenment, a profound understanding of the nature of suffering, the path to peace, and the freedom that comes from letting go. The Buddha's story shows us that silence can be a pathway to insight and transformation. In his case, silence was not an escape, but a way to connect with something much deeper, a source of wisdom that changed his life and the lives of millions who followed his teachings. Modern examples of silence's power. Stories of transformation through silence aren't limited to ancient times. Many people today have found clarity, peace, and purpose through the practice of silence. Take, for example, those who go on silent retreats for days or even weeks. They commit to not speaking, not checking their phones, and not engaging with the usual distractions. Instead, they spend their time in meditation, self-reflection, and observation. For some, the first few days of a silent retreat are incredibly challenging. Without the usual distractions, they come face to face with their inner world, their worries, insecurities, and regrets. But as they sit with these thoughts, something amazing happens. The mind begins to settle, the noise quiets down, and they start to feel a deep sense of peace. By the end of the retreat, many people report feeling transformed. They describe it's as if they've been reset, as if they've been given a fresh perspective on life and a newfound sense of calm. There's also a story about a young woman named Aya who struggled with overwhelming stress and anxiety. Aya worked a demanding job in a big city, and the constant rush left her feeling drained and disconnected from herself. One day, she decided to try something different. She set aside just 1 hour each weekend to sit in complete silence. No phone, no music, just her and her thoughts. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. She didn't know what to do with all the thoughts and feelings that surfaced. But over time, Aya noticed a shift. In those moments of silence, she began to understand the sources of her anxiety. She saw that much of her stress came from trying to control things that were beyond her control. Through this simple practice, she learned to let go. Her life didn't change overnight, but gradually she felt more grounded, more in tune with herself, and more at peace with the world around her. Silence in Aya's life became a kind of refuge, a place she could return to whenever she felt overwhelmed. And the beauty of it was that she didn't need any special tools, no particular location or ritual. Silence was something she carried within her, a source of strength she could tap into at any time. These stories remind us that silence is accessible to all of us. It's not reserved for monks in monasteries or people on silent retreats. It's something we can integrate into our daily lives, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. What all these people found in silence is something words can hardly describe. It's a sense of freedom, a feeling of being grounded in something unshakable. They discovered that silence is not empty. It's filled with insights, clarity, and a peace that goes beyond circumstances. So as you listen to these stories, consider how silence might transform your own life. You don't have to sit under a Bodhi tree or go on a retreat. Oh, embrace silence. All you need is the willingness to sit quietly, listen deeply, let go, and trust in the wisdom of stillness. Often, the answers we seek aren't found in the noise, but in the quiet spaces we intentionally create. As we conclude this journey, let's pause and reflect. Throughout history, silence has been a profound ally for those in search of wisdom, inner peace, and self-discovery. In Buddhism, silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a gateway, a connection to the present moment, to the essence of who we are, and to the world around us. It strips away distractions and invites clarity. We've explored what silence means, its transformative benefits, and how to incorporate it into daily life. Silence, like a mirror, reflects our inner thoughts and emotions with honesty and depth. Through stories, we've seen how it can reveal a profound peace that is always within reach, no matter the circumstances. The beauty of silence lies in its simplicity. It requires no special tools or conditions, only the willingness to pause, to listen, and to let go. If there's one message to take with you, it's this. Silence is not something to avoid. It is a space to meet yourself, discover clarity, and cultivate a peace that transcends words. Each moment of silence brings you closer to balance, understanding, and acceptance of life as it is. I invite you to experience this for yourself. Start small, just a few minutes each day. Find a quiet space to sit, breathe, and observe. Let this practice grow naturally over time and notice the subtle but powerful changes it brings to your life. If this message resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Together, we'll continue exploring ways to nurture peace, clarity, and mindfulness. Remember, silence is always within reach, and the answers you're looking for already exist within you.